At first, distance was a pause, a brief step back to let the body settle. Then it began to repeat, not urgently, not defensively, just reliably. Connections softened before they deepened. Silence felt kinder than explanation. Space offered a kind of permission that closeness never quite did. The body learned this rhythm slowly, tension easing when nothing approached, relief appearing where warmth once lived. Eventually, distance stopped feeling like a choice. It became the background state, the place things returned to, the place that felt most like home. There was a stretch of years where nothing dramatic happened. The same morning light through the same window, the same chair, the same mug, its weight familiar in the hand. Conversations arrived and passed. Invitations were accepted, then declined, then accepted again. Nothing decisive. At first there was attentiveness, listening carefully. A slight tightening in the chest when voices grew warmer, when expectation entered the room. Afterward, a long walk, or the quiet of a kitchen at night, water running longer than necessary. This happened again and again. Over time, the timing became predictable. Connection, a faint internal lift, then a subtle pressure, then the easing, once alone again. Not relief exactly, more like the absence of effort. Years passed like this, the same gatherings, the same people, the same questions, answered with less variation. What changed was not the outside, it was the inner response. Curiosity softened into neutrality, anticipation into quiet calibration. Distance was no longer reactive. It arrived early, shoulders lowering before the door even closed, breath deepening as quiet approached. The repetition did its work, patiently. Familiarity accumulated, not as memory but as posture, as baseline. Nothing felt lost, nothing felt chosen. Distance simply stayed. In the beginning, distance functioned as regulation, a brief widening of space, a pause between moments, a way for sensation to settle. It felt intelligent, timed. After closeness, there was a need to decompress. After engagement, a return inward. The body understood this. Muscles softened, breath slowed. For a while, distance was something used, then released. But what works repeats. The pause lengthened. The return took longer. The step back arrived sooner. No decision, no turning point. Just a gradual extension of what steadied the system. Predictability mattered. Knowing what would come next. Knowing how the body would feel. Regulation became rhythm. Rhythm became expectation. The space that once followed connection began to precede it. The system learned that steadiness lived there. There is a middle phase where nothing is named. Distance is no longer intentional, but not yet identity formed through accumulation. Plans stay open. Replies slow, but do not disappear. Presence remains sincere, but partial. Habit forms quietly, through repetition without resistance. The body hesitates before leaning in, not because something is wrong, but because something familiar is already available elsewhere. Attention drifts inward, out, then back again. No alarm sounds, no conflict appears. It feels natural, unremarkable. Distance gains texture here, stops feeling empty, starts to feel occupied. Thoughts move more freely. Sensations are easier to track. Nothing is refused. Nothing is demanded. Just a preference not yet spoken. This phase can last a long time. A suspension, a hovering, and hovering when sustained becomes a way of standing. This state is often misunderstood. It is not fear of being seen. There is no flinch at attention, no sharp contraction. Being known is not the issue. It simply requires energy. It is not overwhelmed during closeness. Warmth is felt, connection registers, and it is not the pulling away that follows intimacy. The distance here does not follow, it precedes. It is already in place. The body is not reacting, it is residing. Misnaming this state creates unnecessary tension, an attempt to fix what is not broken. What exists here is neither avoidance nor defense. It is a settled orientation, quiet, persistent. Distance does not argue for itself, it simply remains. What repeats becomes familiar. What is familiar becomes expected, and expectation slowly replaces choice. The body begins to assume space, assume quiet, assume low demand, not as desire, but as baseline. Closeness appears as a variation, met with care, with politeness. Distance is no longer something that happens, it is something that is. Language shifts internally, from needing time to this is how it is. Identity forms through accumulation of posture, timing, and energy. The self feels clearest when alone, not dramatically, just distinctly. Distance becomes the context, the background hum, the resting temperature. Eventually, space becomes associated with safety from effort rather than threat. The relief of not orienting outward, of not tracking another rhythm. Belonging shifts, from shared to internal. Home is no longer a place or a person. It is a felt alignment. Breath moves freely, muscles release, attention wanders and returns. The system recognizes this state, trusts it. Home is where nothing asks, nothing presses. Distance carries coherence. And when possible, the body returns. Not from fear, not from necessity, but because this is where it remembers itself most clearly. The first vignette unfolds at work. Morning meetings. The same table, the same voices arriving with their usual cadence. At first, engagement is full. Notes taken, responses measured. The body upright, available. By midweek, something shifts. During pauses, attention drifts to the space behind the eyes. Breath slows. Hands rest more heavily on the table. After the meeting, there is a walk back to the desk. The corridor quiet. Footsteps even. The same sensation returns. A loosening. As if the body has stepped slightly to the side of itself. This repeats. Weeks pass. The meetings remain. The pattern holds. Distance is not withdrawal. Work continues. Words are exchanged. But the body learns where it settles. In the space between interactions. In the quiet after contribution. By Friday, the body anticipates this state. Relief appears not at the end of the day, but in the small silences within it. The second vignette lives in a shared domestic space. Evenings together, meals cooked, television murmuring in the background. At first, closeness feels natural. Familiar movements, shared routines. Over time, there is a subtle leaning away. Not physically, internally. Sitting on the same couch, the body notices the comfort of being slightly elsewhere. Thoughts moving independently. Breath untracked. Later, alone in the bedroom, the same sensation returns. A gentle settling. Muscles releasing without comment. This happens again and again. The body begins to mark the transition. The moment the door closes, the sound of quiet. Distance does not diminish care. It regulates the system, keeps the internal field steady. The third vignette takes place during travel. Train rides, airports, waiting areas. Crowds pass, announcements echo. Movement without connection. At first, the body is alert, scanning, holding itself together. Then, somewhere between stations, a familiar ease arrives. Attention narrows, sounds soften. The body folds inward, contained. This sensation repeats across journeys, across months. Distance here is anonymous, unclaimed, yet deeply regulating. The body knows this environment, knows how to rest inside it. Movement continues. The world passes by. Inside, there is quiet, a temporary home made of space. When distance becomes the place of return, something subtle changes in orientation. The world is still engaged, relationships still exist, but the center of gravity shifts. Relief is real. The body recognizes it immediately, a softening that does not need explanation. At the same time, there's a narrowing, fewer entry points, less permeability, not as loss, but as consequence. Distance offers clarity, but clarity has edges. It allows the system to remain intact, to conserve energy, to avoid constant adjustment. Yet it also shapes what feels possible, what feels reachable, what feels worth leaning toward. This is not a problem to solve, it is a condition to notice. The return to distance can feel like coming home, like closing a door. Both sensations coexist. Neither cancels the other. The body holds this paradox quietly, without commentary, without urgency. It simply returns to what steadies it. There is a particular timing to the state, a moment when the body relaxes before the mind understands why. There is a preference revealed in energy. Less effort feels better. Less exchange feels cleaner. There is a pattern in relief. It arrives not after rest, but after space. There is a subtle orientation inward, attention resting closer to the body, less outward scanning. There is a quiet satisfaction in being unobserved and not needing to respond. These are not decisions, they are signals. They appear consistently, without instruction, without justification. Distance has a rhythm. It breathes, it settles, it repeats. The body moves toward it without thinking, returns to it without ceremony. Time stretches here. Moments lengthen. Nothing presses. This is not an ending. It is a continuity, a way the system keeps itself intact, a place it recognizes even in motion. The rhythm continues, unfinished, unexplained.